All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Kim from Calvert Woodley here. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone showing up tonight to taste wines, Washington State wines with Charles Smith, winemaker. And we're very excited to have him here and also to, have your continued support throughout all of our tastings, whatever version they have taken in. So thank you so much. Tonight on the call, we have Heather Shapiro. She is a representative of Vintners, and she'll be chatting a little bit after me. And of course, we have our guest of honor, Charles Smith, and he is here to talk about the wines in this kit. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Heather and allow her to kick it off.
Great. Thank you, Kim, for the introduction, and happy Father's Day weekend to everybody on the call. Looking forward to kind of having a nice holiday weekend, I guess as we can say. And Kim, I wanted to thank you and Calvert Woodley team and family, as well as everybody on the call for their continued support. House of Smith, Calvert Woodley being family owned and really just kind of having that tight knit family. We really appreciate the support of our portfolio. But just to kind of dive right in, just a little bit about House of Smith. We are one of the largest independent winemaker-owned winery in Washington State, with wines being sold in 50 states and 23 countries worldwide. Our leader, winemaker, Charles Smith, has received 215 scores of 95 points and above, and 815 scores of 90 points above. Keeping in mind, accolades, of course, are of somebody's opinion, but they give us, insightful perspective into the quality and the caliber of the wines that throughout our portfolio. The wines that we're tasting today, really beautiful lineup. Kim, thanks for, there's a lot of great selections in our book. So this is just a little snapshot into the portfolio, but these wines are really beautiful that Charles is going to walk us through. And without further ado, just for logistical reasons too, before I pass it over to Charles, y'all are very disciplined. I see that y'all have your mics on mute, so thank you for that to avoid background noise. But we'd like to just, if you want to comment on the wines throughout the tasting, that's absolutely wonderful and open to that. But if we can, just keep questions to the end and let's have some fun. So without further ado, Charles.
I'm all about fun, apparently. Good evening, everyone. I imagine I haven't looked at the weather. So what is the weather right now? I've been hearing heat wave on the East Coast. Is that correct? Okay, you're all muted, so you can't answer.
I will say it's in DC. It's we've had some lovely, perfect 70-degree weather, but it's starting to warm up. So we'll see. It hasn't been too bad, but it's very beautiful.
Okay, so a beautiful evening there in DC. Awesome. So I'm coming to you from Seattle, and it's the same thing. Typically, we say summer doesn't start in Seattle till after 4th of July, but apparently it has begun now. It's probably about 75 degrees, a couple wispy clouds, blue sky, and absolutely gorgeous. So that's the weather report for where I'm coming from. We had done this 4 days ago. Actually, a week ago, I was on the north shore of Maui, and we were staying 82 degrees per day and about 70 degrees at night, and a slight onshore breeze. So anyways, that's what we have going. For you folks, okay, I know I've been living on the north shore of Maui, and you see a fair number of people and so forth, but this is the first time I've done this since I've been back on the mainland. So for those, unless you're shy, it's so nice to see your faces. So those that you don't have your video on, or there's a reason why you don't want to, that's cool. But if you do, it'd be nice to see you all there. It's been a really interesting last 16 months or so. To see your faces would be really lovely. But nevertheless, let's get this thing going. So I'm coming to you from my dining room table in my house in Seattle, Washington. The first things first, I know that we got together to have some wine. First off, I want to say thank you. I mean, I know people are starting to get out a bit and moving around, things, some of the restrictions are a little bit less right now. And so I know that, it's a Friday evening, it is summertime, and we've been, careful for the last way bit of time. So I appreciate those of you that are here this evening to get together. So I just want to say nice to see you all. So I think first and foremost is this. We're here to talk a little bit about wine, I guess. I'm supposed to tell you about what I'm up to these days and tell you about my wine. So first and foremost, if you don't already have wine in your glass, shame on you. You should. It is Friday night. And so I don't know what the official order of the wines is, but I have a pretty good idea what we're doing. So considering there's only one wine that is not red here, I imagine it's a pop-up. So if you have not already put wine in your glass of this wine here, is this correct? Great. This is the 2019 pop-up, 100% state-grown single vineyard Chardonnay, grown in limestone soils with broken basalt. I recommend that you go ahead and pop the top. Everybody knows how one of these work. I'm sure you can do it without putting anybody's eye out. And so with the finish with the crown cap. So I'm gonna pour myself a glass because now it is happy hour. I was happy like 3 hours ago as well, but now it actually has a title. So happy hour. So while you enjoy this wine, which I hope you do, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the wines in general, about what's in your glass. First and foremost, it's kind of overview everything that I do. Everything that I grow is 100% sustainable. There is no synthetic chemicals used in any vineyards. There's nothing used beside in the vineyards, so they're basically spraying no forces of death. So what would be titled as in practice, not in word, but in practice, sustainable. So we farm sustainable to biodynamic in every vineyard that we grow grapes for to produce our wines. Likewise, in the winery, everything is 100% spontaneous fermentation using the native yeast, which is basically available on the grape clusters in the vineyards. Everything is spontaneous fermented. The only thing that we ever add to our grapes in the winery is a little sulfur, which is very common because wines travel around the country and around the world, and we want to protect them from getting oxidized as they move around in various different climates. Other than that, which is also done at a very low threshold, there's really nothing in my wine besides the grapes and the vessel they're resting in. So essentially, that's what's in your glass. And it's important to know to get going. That's across the board. And so if you want to get really what's into this wine, like I said, it's 100% Chardonnay. So using noble varietal like they do in Champagne and Burgundy. Chardonnay grows exceptionally well in Washington State. The Evergreen Vineyard is exceptional for this kind of wine because it's a cooler site. The soils are limestone, which are great for a terroir presence. And you're like, for sparkling wine under 20 bucks, who cares? We just want to taste good and have some bubbles and have some fun. Well, if you do that, and on top of it, it actually tastes really good and has great degrees of complexity and balance and a creamy texture, and it makes you want to have the next sip. Well, why not? Who doesn't want a little extra? And I'm all about the idea about a little extra. I think the idea for me, who started making wine in 1999, I started making my first vintage was 330 cases of single vineyard Wall Valley Syrah. I started with $5,000 borrowed and 87 Chevy Astrovan. And I will tell you a little bit about that because I was actually having a really good laugh with a friend about the cassette deck and what was stuck in it when I bought the van, and when it subsequently died on the side of the road driving back to Walla Walla, because I used to self-distribute in Washington State. And I put a whole pallet and a half of wine in I can tell you a pallet and a half of wine is over 80 cases. I can tell you 87 Chevy Astrovan, two-tone Burgundy with cloth interior and a cassette deck with Bachman Turner Overdrive, taking care of business, stuck, is not meant to carry 84 cases of wine, but I did it. And I know that where it died, because it was 102 miles away from Walla Walla, because AAA will tow you for 100 miles free of charge. Anything over that, you pay. I paid for 2 miles. So I died 102 miles away, taking care of business in my 87 Chevy Astro van. So I started making wine in a very modest manner back in 1999, releasing my first wines and on December 2nd, 2001 at the Holiday Barrel Tasting Weekend in Walla Walla. And I'm just telling you this while you have some wine in your glass, and the thing is keep drinking and enjoy it to kind of give you a little bit of background. When I began, I moved from Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm not Danish. I managed independent rock and roll bands. I made no money at it. I had a great time, traveled around the world, saw amazing shows, and I lived in Denmark between the ages of 30 and 40. But when I came back to America, I was simply on the advice and beckoning of a friend, now a subsequent friend of mine, was making Syrah in Walla Walla Valley. I met him on a random happenstance, encouraged me to move back to America and make wine, and would give me grapes from his vineyard, and I could pay him for them when I sold my first wine. And that's the only way I got started. My goal originally when I started was, to make maybe 2,000 cases of wine a year. My big goal is like make $100,000 a year. This would be the most amazing thing. This was my goal. It's like, I'll have made it. That was really important to me. I thought I'd meet a local girl, have a family, and have a small town winemaker life. And it turned out very differently, quite differently. And the thing is, but that was my dream, was to make wine. And whether I had great accolades and other types of success, the dream still holds true. My dream was to make wine. And I'm as passionate about it and what do we call it? Emotionally available to make my wines, because I do it with my intent. And my intent is because I make wine for you. I make wine for the people. I make wine for everyone. But the idea is it should have the utmost purity. I should be present. And the idea is the most integrity possible. So that gives you a little bit of background. It tells you what you find in your glass. So I know you've already tried it, because there's no way at 7 p.m. East Coast time you have not had at least a glass of wine. Otherwise, even though we don't know each other, I may be sorely disappointed. So if we shall, happy summer. Cheers, y'all. Nice to see you. It is a real treat. Nice to see you guys. Awesome. So I think one thing, this is the second vintage of this project. This is the first real meaningful national and international release of the wine. I did a one vintage primarily for Target, and the wine had a little bit more residual sugar. This was kind of what the idea was to begin with. And then when I decided to do a national and international release, I decided to do this. This wine has 8 grams of sugar. And if you consider, it's like, oh, wow, what does that actually mean? Think of Louis Roeder, Roeder Champagne, from Champagne. They make really nice wine. They do a wine called Premier Cuvée or Premier Brut, and actually it's a really good wine. That's 11 grams of sugar. And you think, wow, I never knew that. Well, the thing is about acid and sugar balance. So the thing here is I want the wine to be more focused and tasting like the grapes, to have more purity. I don't want to make it up with sugar to create fatness in the mid palate. It's about concentration within the grapes and creating a really beautiful and pure flavor profile. And then in the end, having a really nice fine bubble, which I'm sure you find in your glass, unless you're already drinking Pinot Noir by now, because you might have got started early, but you'll find that there's a nice mousse on the wine. The bubbles are fine. The nose is compelling, slightly reductive, which really helps accentuate the limestone soils. And is really done in a much more quote unquote serious style. But I always thought that, if something, costs 20, it should taste like 30, and vice versa as you work your way up the chain, if you will. So I've been making wine from this vineyard since 2006. And the first wine that I made from there, you may have heard of it. There's a Riesling called Kung Fu Girl, which I started in 2006, I believe. And I started making it with aromatic white wine, which being Riesling from this vineyard. So there you have it. The way I sparkle this wine is actually, I'm I believe I'm the only one in the US doing this because the process is expensive and you're not really supposed to be able to call it sparkling wine. So I was told after labeling it that way, this vintage, it would come out as artisan bubbles next time. So you can do the method champenoise like they do in Champagne, where you do the second fermentation in the bottle, and they'll put a crown cap on it. Actually, during that process, they'll scourge it and put a cage and cork in it. You know, Champagne. You know, we've seen that method champenoise. Then there's another one called Charmat process, which you see, which is basically all you know, reasonably priced Prosecco. You see done that way. And essentially, they put it in a big tank, they add some yeast and some sugar, and they start another fermentation. Well, the truth be, they actually don't really do that. They do it enough to satisfy the government's laws. But what they do is they put this big plate, and it pumps CO2 into there, and it basically carbonates the tank. And they hold it there until bubbles integrate. It takes about 30 days. They put it on the bottling line, and they bottle it. For me, those wines taste in general a little waxy, and this is a personal preference. I think they taste a little bit dull and a little waxy. So lo and behold, I spent a lot of time in Italy, and there was a couple of sparkling waters that I really liked, and I always thought they were naturally sparkling because they were so incredibly good, and they had the coolest labels. And I thought, oh, this is so good. I want to go to where this spring is. And lo and behold, one of my favorites, I realized it's actually not natural. The bubbles are so tiny and so lazy, if you will. They actually have this for carbonated online. And basically what they do is they put the water in these 50-gallon vessels that's in the bottling line, and they put the gas in there and pressurize that water, and it goes straight into the bottle. And then eventually, by the time the water gets shipped around the world, the bubbles integrate into the water, and it creates this really like perfect harmony. And you say, well, isn't that kind of cheating? Well, would you like to cheat in a tank with 10,000 gallons, or how about in 50-gallon batches? So one reason why I really like this method was this. Number one, I think that extra move to the tank when you're making Charmat makes the wines, gives a little more oxidative, which can make the wines just a little dull for my taste. And the fact is, I know they're not really doing it because it's a really hard process. It takes a long time to do it. And with modern, you just have to sometimes like, you know, to say it's barrel aged, it could be in the barrel for one day, not truly barrel aged. But the idea is you can also say it's done Charmat bulk, you know, fermentation, but you don't really have to do the full process there to do it. You can kind of do it. So what I did is decided to brace something 100%. I'm the only one in the United States doing the wine this way. It's very cost prohibitive to buy this equipment, but I thought the idea was create a more freshness, more focus, a finer bead, and a way to put bubbles in the wine at a very fine bead and allow the bubbles to integrate not in a tank, but in the bottle, the same as you would find in Champagne, but without a secondary fermentation in the bottle, but one done to create the bubbles in the small 50-gallon tanks. So it's quite unique. For a guy that is, you know, I think of myself as a traditional producer in contemporary times with contemporary packaging. I find the wine to have a great deal of integrity. And if you still have some in your glass, you can see these beautiful persistent bubbles in your glass, and nothing's nicer than that. Because I also want to be sure that every bottle is fresh and pure, and you can basically taste the vineyards and the fresh air and the water that exists right along the Columbia River out in the middle of nowhere. I'm looking east across Lake Washington right now. I see the Cascade Mountains, snow-capped behind them, and clear as day because it's daytime. And I know that another 100 miles beyond that is where my vineyard sits, and the grapes are there, and they're developing, and eventually I'll be harvesting this coming September. So this is my wine, and this is my POPUP sparkling. It's like, he talked a long time about a wine that's only $20. What the heck? But you get the full story, and that's what's shaking there. Any comments? Besides thumbs up? I like the thumbs up. It's much better than this. Thumbs up, great. You know, the thing about it is, you know, throughout history, we found ways to like protect our wines from, too much oxygen or kind of funky cellars, where you can do it without having to be intrusive. You can do it without having fake things in the wines. You can do it without, just being holistic. You can do it in a proper way and really, get the job done. So the idea with the pop-up, and the reason why it's called pop-up is, a thing that's a happening. It's a thing that happens in the moment. And so the idea is this wine is for the moment or any moment. The reason why I use the crown cap, because everybody knows how this works. Very low tech. And when you go to a restaurant and you've seen servers that, they are so terrified of opening that bottle of sparkling wine with a cork in it. And you should be as well, because they might actually injure you and you might need an eye patch going forward. So my idea is like, this is lo-fi, everybody can do it. And the idea that also guarantees that every bottle that you get is sealed properly, it's fresh, and signals that this is to drink. And that doesn't take away about integrity, complexity. All it does is say, we're ensuring that every bottle is going to be really good. And that's what the whole idea about the pop-up. That's the idea about the way that I actually sparkle the wine. It's the way that, I do single vineyard, sustainably farmed from really great soil types. So I put everything that I can do there with nothing else that I don't want. So this is my wine. And this is the first real, what do you call it? National, international release of the wine. It's really my answer to things that I found to be a lot more sweet and kind of saying, maybe not as smart. I like to think of make smartening of the wines instead of dumbing them down. Because, the fact is, if you buy my wine, it pays my health insurance and my daughter's school. And so the idea is, who am I really working for? I'm working for you. Who do I make my wines for? I make them for you, but like I said, once again, in my own integrity. So I do hope you enjoy the wine. This is part of one of the new innovations I've been doing. And I've been doing black and white labels since I started in 1999. I've been known for doing that. And as you maybe have noticed, that there used to be not so many black and white labels, and now there's a lot more black and white labels. And along the way, I've created a couple things that kind of spread that. I mean, back in 2004, you probably have seen the wine House Wine. I started House Wine in 2004. And when I was only 1,800 case small winery in Walla Walla. And, I did that for 3 years. And then I realized people actually want to buy things that you create. And so I sold that to somebody else. So I've made those wines for years. But of course, the black and white wines, and of course, Charles Smith wines like Kung Fu Girl, Velvet Devil, you've seen those wines, which I started making in 2006. And I actually sold that to Constellation in 2016. So therefore, I don't make those wines any longer. But there was an imprint for why I want to do black and white, because I find it to be very straightforward, very honest. And I wanted to use something that was very graphic and told you that what is within the bottle is what you are to discover. So with that being said, we should move on to the red wine. I think the Substance Cabernet Sauvignon, does that sound good? I don't know what your order was, but I have my own order. So we're going to go along with that because you're all on mute. So I can't hear any complaints anyways. So if you would like to take your 2018 Substance Cabernet Sauvignon and pour it in your glass, please do so. So when I started this project, I decided to make it all about one varietal. And even though I do a few more little things now, but I all wanted to be about one wine. If Cabernet is king, Chardonnay is queen. But the idea here was to make Cabernet Sauvignon. I also want to be a wine where it says Cabernet Sauvignon, it's 100% of what it says on the label. It says Cabernet Sauvignon. And the thing is, most people don't know, you can label wine Cabernet Sauvignon, there'd be up to 25% of another varietal. Maybe something that's a little cheaper, maybe a little riper, it could be Syrah or something else. But the thing is, I believe in truth and packaging. And so this is Cabernet Sauvignon 100%. On all of my wines, if it says a varietal, it doesn't say anywhere else the percentage of the different varietal, it's always 100% of what it says it is. So if you like, I'm a cab man, I'm a cab man, and it says Cabernet Sauvignon, this is for the cab person, this is the wine because it's 100% of exactly what it says. So when I started this project, I decided to make Cabernet Sauvignon. And once again, pour the wine, drink the wine. We can talk about, I'm not gonna tell you what you taste. We all have different smells, different palates, things we enjoy. You know, I'll kind of tell you a little about like how I did it and what was my intent. And it's up to you to discover the wine that's in your glass. So when I decided to do the Cabernet Sauvignon, it's called wines of substance. So, you know, that seems to have to mean something. I looked it up on later on, talking to my good friend Rick Acorf, who I do all the artwork with. By the way, I do all the conceptual design myself. I named the wines, the conceptual design, and my friend Rick Acorf. She's a clothing designer, and she doesn't really do graphics as her primary work. But she's been my friend since the early 90s. I met her in Denmark, and she's fiercely independent and opinionated and brilliant. And therefore, the labels always get to where they need to be because there's never any compromise. So the idea here was this. So we know there's been a lot of discussions about voting or, you know, in elections and all this stuff for quite some time, however you want to perceive it. But here it is. I had to decide what kind of Cabernet Sauvignon I'm going to make. So in my mind, there's two different kinds of Cabernet Sauvignon. There's a more red fruit version, you know, kind of red currant, tobacco leaf, minerality, maybe pencil shaving, something like that. You get the idea, really beautiful. There's also the more black fruit version of Cabernet Sauvignon, more blackberry, black cherry, kind of chocolate, coffee. Once again, pencilette, earth, you get it. And I decide what kind of wine did I want to make? What was really my opinion? So I thought about it and I made a decision. But I was just talking about voting. And the thing is, here's the deal. By a show of hands, we're going to vote on something. If you don't vote, you don't get an opinion. We don't want to hear what you got to say later. If you don't vote, I don't give a shit what you have to say. So here's the deal. And the thing is, you have a vote, right to vote, not vote, and whatever your opinion is yours, whether I agree with you or not. Okay, that was not really a political statement, but I'm saying is, this is your opportunity to vote. This is bipartisan and affects nothing except what we're doing right here for a little bit of fun. There is absolutely nothing to lose in this vote. So, by a show of hands, that is, even though I can't see Mary, Allison, Klaus, Kathy, Wade, and Joanne, yeah, you can always maybe send a thing that maybe shows that what way you're voting. But by a show of hands, you got to raise your hand. If you prefer the bright red fruit version of Cabernet Sauvignon, please raise your hand. Well, if you prefer the black fruit version, the more dark brooding version of Cabernet Sauvignon, raise your hand. Some of you voted twice. Yeah, I've heard about that shit too. Anyways, so the thing is, okay, I got the thumbs up. So by general vote, the black fruit version won. So what do you think I did? I produced wine with a black fruit profile. How do you do that? Do you do it in the winery? No, what you do is you find vineyards that produces fruit that has a black fruit profile. So it'd be a very distinctive style Cabernet Sauvignon that I thought would be dense, dark, and fruity, what the majority of people like, because I'm making it for the people, and I sought out these vineyards. And there's never a compromise making from vineyards that don't produce that kind of fruit. The wine is 100% whole berry fermented. It spends more than 35 days fermenting, and on the skins before I press it. It spends 13 months in barrel, goes to barrel dirty, sitting on the gross lees. It's topped every 4 weeks, drawn off, assembled, and bottled. In some years, unfiltered and unfined. So every year receives really good accolades, 91 to 93 points from all the top wine writers, and it sells for under 20 bucks. Now, who doesn't want 93-point Cabernet Sauvignon for under 20 bucks? I do. And the other thing is, if I'm making the wine for you, and the thing is, if that financial proposition works for me, it works for everybody along the line, it should work for everybody. If it works for everybody, it's all good. And it works for me, and so I just have to make more wine. so to be able to make it work for me. And I already told you how I make wines. It's all grown sustainable. It's all native fermented. When I make 4 barrels or 250 cases of something, it is always done in that manner. I never rush the fermentations. Big wineries have to turn the tanks every 7 to 10 days because they need to make more wine. So what they do, because they have grapes coming in, so what they do is they add enzymes, they add, which is extract color. They use cultured yeast because that they know it's going to start immediately. And the thing about it is, I don't make that wine this way. I'm known for making single vineyard high-end Syrah as a top end winemaker, and I want to convey that same kind of vibe to whatever wine I produce. And so instead of using commercial yeast and so forth to speed up the process, if I want to make more wine, I buy more tanks. And you're like, that's crazy because it's not economically feasible. But you know what? It is, because I know that I'll never always maintain and not compromise the quality of the wine. And therefore it works for you and it works for me. And this is how you can make wine like this. So of this wine, I think I made 200,000 cases, a black fruit version of Cabernet Sauvignon, sustainably farmed, native fermented, over 35 days on the skins. And what I do is after 30 days, I taste the wine for every day. When it doesn't improve for 2 days, I press it. And that's the wine you get. The wines get the really silky texture, really long on the palate, really refined tannin, but the same thing. It tastes like Cabernet Sauvignon in a black fruit profile. And so this is the wine that I make for you. So enjoy. I mean, it smells like cab. It's not, it should be what it's advertised, you know? Go figure.
Yeah, Charles, I love how like pure cab it is. This is such a good example, I think, of what, the grape can taste like. And yeah, I think that's what I really like about it. It's like, it's not even super heavy. And it's something that sometimes you kind of expect out of cab, because that's what, you expect from Napa and stuff. And I think it's easy to associate cab with that, but cab can have so many different expressions. And I really enjoy this.
Thank you. Well, I think the finesse is more like you'll find in Bordeaux. I'm not saying, I'm making Washington wine, of course. I'm not trying to emulate Bordeaux, but when you've been doing things for hundreds of years and you work really hard and you have restrictions like you have in France with watering and so forth, you make do with what you have. And you do the best work you possibly can to get it to the end. Well, my thing about here is about texture. Wine's silky. It has a sense of lightness without being with a full flavor. And this weightlessness, if you will, is really what I'm going for. And these are some of my more reasonably priced wines. I make wines up to $150 at 98, 99 points every year. But the idea is, I think everybody should have access to good wine, no matter how much money they have. The idea that the wines that I make that are more reasonably priced, if you will, are the wines that are the most difficult for me to make, because you got to really, really, really get it right everywhere. And the other ones, the wines that I care the most about. Yeah, it's great getting really high accolades and all that stuff. But the other thing is knowing that you're doing the work that you're most passionate about, and that people get what you're doing. Like Kim, you get what I'm doing here. I mean, this is not American $15, $60 Cabernet Sauvignon. Other wineries, you take a winery from someplace else, this would be $45 to $65 for what it delivers, because the texture and the depth and so forth. And it doesn't need to hit you over the head to be finesseful and sexy and have deep color and be really, really pleasant. And I can promise you that this wine would be really killer 10 years from now, because I know what I put into it. I farm also 7x3 spacing, which means that means the plants are 7 feet, the rows, by 3 feet between the plants. And commercial spacing is usually 9x5 to run machines and mechanical harvesters to do it. So basically what I'm farming, they usually farm, 5 to 6 tons the acre, especially in California where it's warmer, because they need to, because otherwise it ripen too quickly. I'm farming 3.5 tons the acre. So you're gonna get natural concentration because I have more plants per acre to be able to do that. So that's why the wine is as it is. So the substance cab truly has substance. And for those of you that prefer the red fruit version, better luck next time. But every once in a while you can try one of these. But I hope you enjoy the wine. And actually, in this vintage, 2018, this wine was bottled unfiltered and unfined, and I produced 200,000 cases unfiltered and unfiltered and unfined wine, which is nothing that any other producer in the United States would possibly even imagine do. The other thing is, I'm a sole proprietor. I own the winery myself. I have no partners, no investors. So I don't sit around with a bunch of board members and then somehow dumb down my wine and we all have to agree. I have the vision for my wines. I have a team that is incredibly talented, and we take all our wits about ourselves and see how we can elevate our skill sets to do the best work that we can. And that's what we're really passionate about. I mean, like I said, if for every dollar that we make from our wines, the thing is, we know that people work hard for their money, and they're going to lay down their money for our wine. We want to actually earn every dollar of it. And it's like, wow, that sounds really unique. Well, isn't that the way it's supposed to be? I know which side my bread is buttered on, and it's by the people that actually buy my wine. So I want to do the best work for you. So cheers. I hope you enjoyed the wine. Oh my God, I'm in a dilemma. I don't have a Syrah. Well, I have a Syrah glass handy. I don't want to dump this glass out because it's so delicious. And I'm not supposed to say that because it's my wine. It makes me sound like a braggart. So I have my phone. Maybe I can put on a musical interlude while I go grab a Syrah glass. And it could be any other glass. So let me, my phone was next to me charging. I spent between the end of harvest and end of winemaking until last week on Maui, because I have an 8-year-old daughter, and we were in Seattle. And you heard it rains a lot in Washington State. It rained buckets this winter in Seattle. And so if you're doing virtual school, that means you're not going to school, you're not with your classmates, you can't go outside, you can't go anywhere, and you're an 8-year-old hanging out with me, you're gonna go bonkers. So fortunately, we had the ability to go to the island of Maui and be on the North Shore of Maui. And this is how we spent our winter. So I'm gonna give you a little song to listen to while I go get another glass. I didn't plan this, but it actually seems like fun. Can you hear it? That is the Sandals from the movie Endless Summer, this great surf movie from the 60s that Bruce Weber did. If you have ever seen it, it's a perfect Sunday hangover movie because there's like they're surfing and it's beautiful and there's cool music because the Sandals did all the music, and you just somehow don't feel so bad. So I'll be right back. So anyways, but the idea was here, I actually needed to go get a glass because the Cabernet was tasting so good. I really didn't want to actually dump it out. That would be pretty uncool. So the next wine we're going to do is the Milbrandt Syrah. The other thing I'm going to forget before I move on this wine, the label. It's the periodic table. Everybody's familiar with it. One of the things about my labels, I always wanted to find found images or found terms that people already recognize, pronounce, and remember. The idea is communicate the language of every wine to everybody because not everybody speaks wine. And so, of course, this year, millions of children were in school learning the name of my wine brands because they're reading the periodic table at school. So every year, I'm getting new wine drinkers educated to be able to discover my wine. And the fortuitous thing is, and quite weird, and monogram like, this wine is Cabernet Sauvignon, and happens to be, my name is Charles Smith. So there you go. Fortuitous first wine to begin with. So the wine that you should be pouring in your glass is the Vintners Syrah, and it should be the 2017, right? Is that correct? Awesome. We don't get this right all the time, just so you know. You can only imagine. I mean, rehearsal after rehearsal or after rehearsal, we just never get it right. So I've been making this wine labeled this way since the year 2000. Butch and Jerry Milbrandt own vineyards, and they're the primary grower of quality, in my opinion, and pretty much everybody's opinion, in the Wallach Slope, which this area is east of the Columbia River and the middle of the Washington State. And this wine is a combination of two vineyards. One is called Clifton, which is sand and gravel soils, and the other is Northridge, which is on ancient soils, which is above the sedimentary soils, which is fragment basalt. And so this wine has a bit of power and at the same time a bit of really nice perfume. In the sandier soils, you're going to get a more perfumed wine. You're going to get the minerality from the gravel, if you will. And in the ancient soils on a little higher elevation, you get more of the power, if you will. This is the only wine that that I ferment in stainless steel tank. I don't, make large batches of Syrah. I think I make about, I don't know, Heather, you might know better than I do. I think I make about 2,000 cases of this wine, right? More or less. More or less. Okay. You're on mute too. Great. I like it. More or less. So more or less. But the thing is, I think it works best if in my wines, if it is a Bordeaux varietal like the last wine, it's 100% whole berry, no crush. If it's a Rhone varietal like Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, you get it. It is 100% whole cluster with the stems. Always, never changes 100%. If it's more than one varietal, it's been co-fermented. I never blend. So basically, I put, if I think it's going to be 70-30 in every fermenter, I'll put 70-30 of the proportion of the grapes in the fermenter and ferment together. And I never do any adjustments at the end. So this wine is the only Syrah that I make that is not 100% single vineyard, but it's from the same grower. And I think it really is a great example of the Wallach Slope. I've been making the wine from this vineyard since the year 2000. This wine spans, I think, 20 months and beautiful 600-liter punches. I don't put my wines in regular barriques, Burgundy barriques. I started doing this a number of years. I like the wines. I think what they'll do is they'll have less exposure to wood. It'll be about 15 to 20% new, but in a very light toast, but in a larger configuration. And so what I have, there'll be less surface touching wine. And then what I do is when I press the grapes, it goes to barrel dirty, which means basically I don't filter it off or clean it up, let it settle before I put it in barrel. I mean, there's not any solid particles, if you will, but there's remnants. There's part of the chemistry there, and they'll settle out. Lees, and they'll sit in there and they'll settle on this. And I think the idea is I think about meat that's closest to the bone. Meat that, like ribs and so forth, and steaks that are with bone. There'll be more flavor. So the idea is being in contact with something that is part of the process will give the wine a beautiful flavor, more contact with where it came from. And also, I don't rack my wines, which means I don't take them out of barrel, clean up the barrel, and put them back over the time that they're aging. And that will create a wine that has a little bit more reductive character. And reductive character usually will give, it can be this funky matchstick thing, which I don't have in my wine. But what it can do also, it helps compound and intensify the mid-palate impression and density, and also retain the freshness. So the wine actually will be firmer and will have the opportunity to age a long time. I know it sounds a little complicated, but the thing is, what I'm trying to do is give the wine more mid-palate density and give the wine ability to age a lot longer. And as it's in your glass, to keep revealing itself and not be like you're pouring a beer, which can be delicious, but it's not going to give you any more than what it gives you on the first sip. Well, unless you have 15 of them, it gives you a whole lot of other things. But on the other hand, it won't give you more than the first sip. So this is my Milbrandt Syrah, named for Butch and Jerry Milbrandt, 2017. So please give it a shot. I think maybe with this wine, you're starting to get a theme. My wines are very smooth. They're very silky. They're very balanced. Also, when you swallow the wine, you find that your mouth salivates. So it has an impression of richness, but it still has an ability to really engage your palate. And your mouth is more interested, like I'm looking for the next taste. Because as you taste more, your mouth gets more and more used to it. And the wine keeps building and building and building in flavor. And that gives an opportunity for the wine to become more complex, and in my opinion, much more satisfying, much more compelling, and you should not, get bored of drinking the wine. The other thing about it is wine like this, I still have bottles of the 2000 vintage, was the first vintage, and they're still drinking really strong. So American Syrah at 20 years, we're far up north. People think, we're really, really far north, here in Washington State. We're at the same latitude as Burgundy. I don't know, the French wouldn't think that's really way too far north. I know they make some pretty good wine in the Rhone and Burgundy along the Rhone River. So the bottom line is, are we really that far north, or California is really that far south? It depends on how you look at it. The truth is, California is really far south. It's very warm there. You can make some big wine. I'm a native of California. I'm from Sacramento originally. Found my way to Washington State, and there's a lot of terrific wines made in California. But there's something about Washington State that really has an opportunity for the wines to hang on the vine a lot longer and produce wines with a greater degree of complexity and finesse and flavor, without really big alcohol and huge fruit. And this is an example at the most modest level of my Syrah that I produced. Like I said, this is the only single wine that's not single vineyard that I produced. And this is just the beginning point. So I guess if there's such a thing like St. Joseph of Washington State, which is where St. Joseph is all over the Rhone. There's different parts all over there, not just one central located. It kind of, I think, says this. It's like where there's a lot of really good sites in the Rhone that work really, in the Northern Rhone, work really, really well for Syrah. And this is an example of that. So I hope you enjoyed it. Are we good? We can move on. Okay, I know it's supposed to be only 1 hour. I checked the time. So you can bring out the hook at any time. You can just ghost me. I just want to let you know I won't be offended. But sometimes, to tell a full story, a life story of doing this, it sometimes this can't be told in an hour. So the next wine I have here is the Golden West. This is the one you guys have? Yeah. All right. You all have the same one? Yeah, you do. Okay. All right. So I even got myself a Burgundy glass. I'm pretty excited about that. Is it necessary? No, but why not? So here's my wine. So I'll break it down. So if you heard like Pinot Noir in Washington State. Okay, how many of you have drank Pinot Noir from Oregon? Okay, I know it's kind of a dumb question, but really raise your hand. Okay, it's like you've drank wine from there. Okay, almost everybody. Okay, in the 70s, you know what they said? You're gonna plant Pinot Noir in Oregon? What an asshole! You gotta be fucking kidding me! There's no way you can do that. All right, and guess what? What is Oregon known for? Making Pinot Noir. Because some people said, we don't care what you think we can do or not do. We believe we're going to do it, and we're going to do it. Okay, so there's lots of great growers and great winemakers in Oregon, making a very Oregonian Pinot Noir, in my opinion. I'm a native California. There's lots of really good Pinot Noir growers and producers in California, making very good Californian Pinot Noir. So you think, what is the profile of Washington Pinot Noir? Because I never heard about it, know nothing about it. what the heck is this guy doing Pinot Noir in Washington? It rains there all the time. Well, I can tell you, it rains a great deal of the time west of the Cascades. Guess what? Just like you guys are, but a lot further away, the vineyards are east of the Cascades as well. It is dry there. So why decided to do this? Where great Chardonnay is grown, Pinot Noir also exists. Burgundy, right? Guess what? So here's the deal. In Burgundy, the majority of the white wines are grown in limestone, and the red wines are broken marl. And then what you find in this not so significant area, but it's called Vos Romanée, where they have an amazing wine with the greatest perfume, delicious and much power. The vineyards are over 50% limestone when it starts getting the first cruise up the hillside. So let me tell you a little about where my vineyard sits. We're at the same latitude as Pommard, Burgundy. 2, we're over 50% limestone in our vineyards, like Vos. We're within 1 degree within the growing season of Gevrey. And lastly, nearly all New World Pinot Noir is what? Coastal, grown on the coast, within 100 miles of the coast, within 50 miles of the coast. Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, Sonoma, Willamette Valley, coastal. Guess what Burgundy is not? Coastal. It is continental climate. Guess what Washington is? Continental climate. We have the same latitude, same degrees of ripening, same soils, and we are continental. So why the hell would you not be able to grow great Pinot Noir in Washington? No reason. Now, we expect it to be coastal flavors, raspberry, cherries, raspberry jam, strawberry mineral that you find in a lot of Oregonian wine. Not all of them, but the majority. And my favorites are much more deeper, compelling. I love wines. I love Christum wines, and I think they make beautiful wines. And there's a number of people that make delicious wines. They're a little bit more red fruit, but the idea is, why not here? So I made the 2018 vintage, 2019 vintage, and this is where the wine, the rubber hits the road. This is return. If you think New World, you're so far off. You're like, what the hell is it? If you think, keep open and you think maybe Old World wine, put your nose in the glass. The color looks like Pinot, doesn't look like Syrah. The smell, you don't smell raspberries or berries or spice. Kind of smells like forest floor and mushroom and earthy and herbs. Just give it a gentle swirl. It starts to smell like a woman's evening bag from the 1950s and 60s, where there would be made out of leather and there'd be some satin lining and there'd be a crushed cigarette, some coins, maybe a lipstick, a little bit of perfume, and the different perfumes were put in there. That's very compelling smell, a woman's evening bag of olden day. A complexity, je ne sais quoi, that thing you can't put your finger on. Isn't that what's great about Burgundy? And isn't that great when Pinot Noir can transcend just grapes and becomes that ethereal, I don't know what, then it becomes an opportunity to be that thing that people just dream about. And this wine doesn't have obviousness to it. This wine has, and you got to remember, it's 2019. It's so young. This is the 4th leaf. It's the 2nd harvest. So when you put this wine to your nose, it doesn't smell like somebody on their first evening out. It smells like something with some knowledge and some time, some experience. So give it a smell, give it a taste. It's not fruity. It's earthy. It hints at dark fruits. The texture is velvety. The insistence of the tannins says, I'm here. I'm here. Don't forget me. I'm right here in your glass. Come back at me. Come back at me again. And you got to think, we've just done like acrobatics with our palate. Even on the first sip, the wine has a silky texture. It has a compelling nose that doesn't smell like fruits. This has the opportunity to be one of the greatest places in the world to grow Pinot Noir. Now, I'm not comparing to any place else. Nobody knows what the Washington profile is because it's not been done before. I planted, produced, continue to plant, and produce the largest planted Pinot Noir in the history of Washington State. I have 543 acres of Pinot Noir in the ground, all single vineyard, all between 1,400 and 1,700 feet elevation, 4 different columns, all in limestone, all southwest facing, some of it at steep degrees. And this is what's possible. And this is why I made Pinot Noir. So this is like my Burgundian dream. I'm not trying to emulate Burgundy. I'm making Washington wine. But the thing is, the Burgundy wines gave me the dream, and the earth here in Washington gave me the ability to actually somehow try to get there, if you will. So this is my Golden West Pinot Noir, 100% single vineyard. And the fact is, once again, first 2 vintages, scores or whatever, that's one person's opinion. I mean, 2 years of 93 points for $20 Pinot Noir is insane. You have Burgundies that sell for $100 a bottle that don't get those scores. And the point being is, it only really matters what you think. And this is the beginning. And the reason why it's labeled The Promise is, back in the old days, people would travel out west, like, go out west, seek the promise, go out to the Golden West. So the idea is, the promised land. And the idea is the promise is between me and you, and that I will do the work to fulfill, the promise that we have together, that I'll do the wine and you'll do the drinking. And that's our promise. So this is a little bit of what I do. If we were to do all the wines, we would be hammered, because I think I make a lot of wines. I actually don't even count them all because I have 7 different projects between Vintners, Wines of Substance, Golden West, POPUP, Vino, Castle Smith, Sixto, my high elevation old vine Chardonnay winery. I also own and make the wines for Charles and Charles. Have I forgot anything? If I have, forgive me. I have lots of things to ask forgiveness for. But on the other hand, these are the wines that I make. And so this is a little insight at some of the beginning points. And that I've done. And the other thing is the Gold West Pinot Noir, the Substance, Cabernet Sauvignon, and the POPUP are my 3 most newest innovation things that I've decided to do. Not really take the path that's been most traveled, but strike out on my own and do what I think is possible. And this is my work. So anyways, that's kind of all I got. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And this way you can talk and I can drink. This is so much a better prospect. I gotta wet my whistle. Listen, my whistle's not working. It's not wet enough. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
All right. Well, we did have a few questions in the chat, so we'll go through those. And then if anyone wants to jump in at any point, feel free. So I'm going to scroll back here to some of the questions. One of them was, Charles, what educational background did you have when you started to make wine? Like, did you have an interest or a background before you started making Syrah, or was it something you just sort of dove into?
Okay, so I came to wine by way of the hospitality industry. I started working as a waiter. I was a migrant restaurant worker. I worked winters in Palm Springs, summers in Napa Valley, or Lake Tahoe, going back to when I was 80. My first job was at the Palm Springs Biltmore Hotel, where I spilled 11 orange juices in the lap of Roger Smith, the head of General Motors. You ever see the movie Roger and Me? You ever seen that doc? Which is right? Guy was an asshole, but nevertheless, the first person I ever waited on. I had a tray. If any of you ever worked in a restaurant, carried a tray, okay, you know how frightening and terrifying the first thing. So I walk in the kitchen, working breakfast, take it to conference room number 1, never carried a tray, orange juice, pick it up like this, put back out the door. I'm 19 years old, go down the room, somehow I get the door open with my elbow, and I go to the room and there's 12 people sitting around a conference table. There's no other table in the room except the one they're sitting around, and there's no place for me to put the tray down. Oh, fuck, what am I doing now? So somehow I kind of get it onto one table and like this. I'm standing next to Roger Smith. I take one orange juice off. You know what happened? Well, this guy that ran General Motors wearing Bermuda shorts, he just ended up having like, I don't know, he ended up having 11 8-ounce glasses of fresh squeezed orange juice right in his Bermuda shorts. I can tell you that was the last day, that was the last minute I ever worked at this restaurant at the Biltmore Hotel. But lo and behold, I ended up actually being pretty good at it after that job. And I came to I worked at a place called the Spa Hotel, Agua Caliente room. Back in the old days when they had these French dining room, the continental cuisine, they had a maitre d', a captain, front waiter, back waiter, busboy. Okay, so I walked in there to get a job. I was 20 years old because obviously I got fired from the Biltmore Hotel. And I walked into the kitchen and it's like, wow, it's really hot in here. And it's like, okay, I realized this is where it's hot. You get paid terribly. You work long hours and somebody yells at you the whole time you work. I'm like, F this, I don't want this job. And I walk into the dining room. It's called the Agua Caliente room at the Spa Hotel. It's like where all really rich people go back in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. And obviously I was not one of them because I'm walking through the kitchen to go look for a job. And all of a sudden the air conditioning's on, there's soft music, everybody's dressed nice. It's like, ooh, this is pretty pleasant. It smells pretty good out here too. So I meet the maitre d', Michael, who's a stone cold alcoholic wearing a tuxedo that was custom made for him. And I got a job as a back waiter carrying out the food from the kitchen. I realized after a while that there was somebody else that was really, that I realized was really compelling to me. He walked around every night. Apparently he had won some award. He had this gold chain with a big medal around his neck. He came in late, left early. We had to tip him, and he actually won like the Olympics or something, but he wasn't. It turned out he was the wine guy. And it's like, I want that person's job. And then I got really interested in wine. And from then on, I just kind of worked my way through. I worked for Domaine Chandon. I was a wine director for Ritz-Carlton Hotels, for a couple of hotels on the West Coast, even in my mid-20s. And I found that this was my thing. And that's what brought me to making wine. It was my dream. I moved to Denmark when I was 29. I couldn't get a job in the wine industry. Even driving a forklift in a warehouse for a distributor. Actually, I wrote a letter to on a typewriter to every single importer in Denmark, and one wrote me back in Danish. In Denmark, we speak Danish. And I was like, well, I've only lived in Denmark for 2 weeks. It's kind of hard to learn Danish. It's kind of a complicated language because my girlfriend is Danish, read it to me. And lo and behold, I want to write them all thank you notes for not giving me a job because now I'm here with you today. And the thing is, I still have them all wrapped up and bound. I have all the rejection letters from 1990 when I couldn't get a job in the wine industry there. So because we should actually thank the Danes for not giving me a chance, and so I can be here with you today. They do make wine, actually. They're making it in Sjælland. The Danes make wine. And because, as you know, the whole world's getting warmer, and they're starting to make wine. I haven't actually had anything good from there yet, but it doesn't mean there's nothing good produced. But they do have distributors because they like to drink a lot, because Vikings like to drink. Okay, so that was a story, and it wasn't really the short answer, but that is my story. Other questions?
Yeah. So there was, I guess, some questions about the fermentation process for pop-up, but you kind of covered that. So if there's anything else you want to add to it, we can go back to it. Or again, I will be sharing the recording of this after, so we can revisit that in the recording later.
No, what I do is I do the dosage. I do like the addition of the sugar, like you would do in champagne. I do it when I put the wine before I move it to being sparkled. So I have to guess how the effect of the sparkle will have to do with the sugar. And so that's a bit of point of tension in making the wine, but it's kind of a little based on feeling, and I don't do any additions when I'm done. So once the wine is there, and the addition of bubbles will accentuate the acid, and it's kind of difficult to get it just right. So I'm working on it, and I hope I get it even better in the future.
Right, thank you. The other thing is, someone was wanted to ask a question that's sort of related to the wines from tonight, but they wanted to hear a little bit more about the creator because that is one of their favorites, and that was Chris.
All right. Well, the label was me back in like 1995. I kind of looked like that. And I had a beer garden called St. Charles Beer Garden in Copenhagen at a place called the POPUP, because it was owned by the Kommune, the city, the area of Copenhagen. And they closed down for vacation for 6 weeks every summer. You've heard, like, don't go to Paris in August. They're closed. Paris is closed in August. So kind of the same thing. And then I set up a beer garden outside the place and rented it. And then I had a little club inside on the ground level on the concert hall for 600 people on top. And this was a drawing for St. Charles Beer Garden. And inside I had a club called Club Soda. I know it sounds stupid, but people would come. And so a friend of mine asked me when I started the winery, Charles, that drawing of you, when you had that thing in Copenhagen, you should use that. And I said, well, what do I do? I said, yeah, you should really do it. I think it was fun. It's like, okay, if I do, I think I'll just call it the creator. And lo and behold, we're sitting at a sushi bar. It was a friend of mine, his wife Jill, and her little daughter Eleanor. And Eleanor is like 5 or 6, cute as a button, and super, smart, and a whip as 6-year-olds can be. And the guy sitting next to me was listening to him apparently, and he was highly offended because it has me with a halo. And he was a very religious person. He said, I'm highly offended by you. And I said, well, if you were highly offended, you should actually not eavesdrive on other people's conversations. So, and that I left it at that. And so after that, I was determined to make it a wine label. So I called it the creator. Cabernet Sauvignon Syrah started from the Cayuse Vineyards back in 2003. And therefore it's me with a tilted halo as whatever I may have been. And because I'm the creator of the wine, not of heaven and earth, there's the bottle. I'm just the creator of my own wine. Let it be known, I'm not the savior. So don't look at me for salvation. I am just the guy who makes the wine, creator of the wine. And sometimes people just take everything to and that's it. So the reason the wine was, it was the first time besides the wine that I did for my mother and father called Roma and Ovid, which are Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah co-ferments, that I made the creator because I'm the son of Roma and Ovid. That's the wine. I know, it's like, how do you think of this stuff? I don't really sit around and think of it. It eventually comes to you and you're compelled to take the next step forward and do the work. I'm by far the most prolific winemaker in Washington State, probably as a winemaker in the US. And I am the largest independent producer and winemaker on winery in Washington State. And when I started, like I said, I told you what I thought what it was going to be like. And the thing is, after a while, if you're pure of heart and hopefully the world is open to it, people like the work that you do. I feel very fortunate to do my work. It's worked out beyond my wildest dreams. It's not lost to me on any given day. And there's just a Talking Head song where it says, as the days go by, water, I don't know, just once in a lifetime, same as it ever was. And it's like, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here? Well, the thing is, every day, pinch. I accept that I'm here, but it's a miracle. Yeah, it's miraculous. And the thing is, I'm so appreciative of being able to do this for my life's work. I have other passions, but I needed to make a living. And but fortunately, I hope you enjoy my wines, and you get my intent. And this is why I do what I do, and I'm very fortunate to do it. And it's cool. Yeah, you get to make wine. So great. And the good thing is, I'll never run out of wine. That makes me really happy too.
That is a really nice benefit, right? You're never going to run out of wine.
Never gonna run out. I've never had somebody as the president of my company, that somebody to like run the daily business, because I always did that until 3 years ago. And I have an amazing woman, Anna Moser, who is the president of my company, and she's super great. But to have the ability to do this for my work, it's really cool. Yeah, it's really, 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 really great. And I've been asked many times, like, what's your end game? It's like, I'm 59 years old. What do you mean? What's my end game? I'm just getting started. Get off my chest, I don't know what my end game is. I don't have an end game. The thing is, this is just the beginning. And I'm doing this because this is what I love to do. I told you why I wanted to do this. I wanted to be my life's work. And no matter what the circumstances, majority of positive, have folded for me, have not wavered for the fact that I said, this is what I'm compelled to do. If there's 100 post-its on the wall, let's call it 1,000. And I believe that there's a thing in friends of mine in Japan, they said, every job is honorable. I mean, somebody needs to wash the streets. Somebody needs to do, the unthank jobs, whatever the word is, less thankful jobs. Society needs all of it. And the thing is, there's 1,000 post-its. I walked up and I picked up the one that said winemaker. And I could do this for my life's work. I'm an incredibly fortunate person. And the thing is, and I try to honor the fact that this is my work. And I try to get up every day earlier than everybody else, go to bed later than everybody else, because that's something else. And then at night when I'm sleeping, I dream about what I'm going to do the next day. Because I get to do this. I get to see you guys. The thing is, I've been on Maui, like I said, since the end of November, and say, okay, don't hate me for that, but I have a little girl, and I had the opportunity to be here, and I live in Seattle. But I have an opportunity to do this, and I'm most grateful for it. And it's nice to see all of you there. I mean, like I said, it's summer now. It's Friday night. Some of the restrictions are limited, but being lifted, if you will. 4 months ago, we weren't having the same conversation. And I can tell you, I've done things with importers, magazines, wholesalers, or every time. It's been so nice to see people, because we haven't been able to see each other, and we found a new way to see each other. Right? It's really cool. And are there any more questions, by the way? Probably not. We're good. All right, we're good. Okay, so I want to leave you with something, and it's something I was thinking about before. And here's the deal: it is really nice to see you, and I do mean it from the bottom of my heart, because it's like you who maybe been longing to see your friends, family, your kids. You get it, or just to go out to your local pub and have a pint of Guinness, or have a drink, go sit in the backyard with somebody, and go sit at the counter and have just give me whatever you want, something to eat. Go see a baseball game. I mean, we've been longing for some of these things, and we've been missing some of the things. And then we realize how precious they are, our friends, our family. To see strangers, you can walk down the street without a mask and saying hi. You see their face, they're smiling, they look at you, and they're like, "Hi." It's like you just stepped on the earth for the first time. The thing is, I just want to let you know that it's so nice to see you. I really appreciate you all being here today. I also want to say to you this. I know we've all been feeling pretty good about the way things are going, but just forget it's not over. And I'm not being a doomsday guy. I'm just saying it's not over. And the other thing is this. I live here in Seattle most of the time. I'm in Wall. I have a winery here. It's House Smith, Jet City. I'm here all the time. The thing is, if I come out to that part of your part of the country, and I happen to see you, or I do an event, or happen to run into you in a restaurant, please come up and say hi. And the thing is, and you come out here, say, hey, we saw each other one time. And the thing is, I won't forget you. And it's really nice to see you. And the thing is, a year from now, I want us all to be here still. And so be careful. Don't. It's kind of like football. You guys have a football team out there, right? Like, what do they call now? The Washington Football Club or something like that? Whatever. Okay, you all have your team. If you like football at all, does anybody like football? I like football. Anybody? Okay. Okay, if you don't like football, but the ones who don't, here's the analogy. For the last 16 months, it has been really grueling. You caught the kickoff in the end zone and you decided to run it out. For 16 months, you've been running down the field and you were 5 yards away from the touchdown to winning the game. You're so close. Don't drop the ball. Don't celebrate yet. Don't fumble. Get in the end zone and win. You know why? Because a year from now, even though we might feel good right now because things are lifted, I want you all to be there. And the thing is, why? It's like, you don't know me. Well, you know what? Why should we care about people you don't know? Why not, right? Why shouldn't there be a little humanity here? And what I'm saying to you is I really appreciate the time to see y'all, and I don't take it for granted. And I just want to say, you guys take care of yourself, be good, be safe, be kind. And you're here because you want to be here and we want to be together today. And so I appreciate y'all. Have a good night. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, Charles. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend with Charlotte.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Mhm.